John Edwards for MaryvilleSaints.com alongside head basketball coach Jesse Shaw. And coach, a great start for your team here early this season, jumping out to a 6-1 mark.
Yeah, I think we've been pleased with the most part that we were able to scrape out some really close games. You try to keep everything in perspective. I think, a couple baskets here and there, and it would be a frustrating start, but credit to the guys to finding a way to win a couple close games. And we've really started to had a stretch where we're playing pretty well. So hopefully we can continue moving forward with it.
You, the other night against Lindenwood in the conference opener, trailed most of the second half, but was able to pull even to force overtime. And then you guys became a completely different team in overtime, a little bit more aggressive, especially later, the latter part of in the overtime, and were able to get buckets and prevent Lindenwood from scoring.
Yeah, part of it was they just started missing shots. They were on fire, and we started hitting shots, and we kind of caught fire. But we had some guys that hadn't played quite as much in our recent stretch where we were playing really well come in, and they had a good week of practice, and we felt comfortable as a staff throwing them in there late, and they just kind of sparked us. And we had a lot of shooting out there on the floor, and the guys were hitting shots, and they were playing really hard on defense, and Lindenwood just kind of got cold, and we got a couple bounces, and we were able to escape. But those guys, Jayden Smith is the first guy that comes to mind, and Donovan Parker. But Jayden Smith hadn't played until there was like 12 minutes left in the game, and he came in, and in his minutes, we were plus 16 as a team during his minutes. He didn't play the first 28 minutes, and then he never came out the last 17, and we were plus 16 while he was in, and while Donovan Parker was in, we were plus 21 in the minutes he played. So those guys just came in and played really, really well at an opportune time.
Jayden had 10 points off the bench for you. Donovan Parker scored 4 for you. Cameron Scales had 18 and 8 for you. So your starters are getting points for you, but you're also getting significant contribution off the bench. Kelvin Swims had 16 points for you off the bench in the game on Monday. And talk about some of that balance that you're getting. And it's crucial, especially as the season moves along.
Well, we feel like we're a lot deeper this year, and Kelvin, the way we had been viewing it is we kind of had a 6-man rotation. I mean, you could start any of those 5 starters in Kelvin. The last probably 4 or 5 games, those guys have played really well, all 6 of them. And then beyond that, we have 4, 5, 6 guys that we have felt are kind of battling for that next tier of playing time. And we believe in them. We're just kind of seeing who is playing better in practice and on a given night. And it's been kind of having a hard time figuring out our rotations. And honestly, Monday night makes everything even harder because Donovan and Jayden Smith played the best out of almost anybody. Jayden Smith hit some threes, but he also made very few defensive errors, and he took a huge charge late. He did some really, really good stuff. He drives right to the basket and hits the first guy that comes open and never hardly turns the ball over. And those things were crucial in a game like that. And, it's going to be an evolving thing all year with our team. We're still young. This is still just my second year and our second year as a staff. And we got a lot of new faces, or a lot of teams are a little bit older. We got 6 or 7 new faces, and we're still trying to figure out, honestly, who our best players are. It's not as easy as it sounds, but sometimes Jayden Smith comes in and plays really, really well, and then other days it's been Dylan Ingram's played great to start the year. JT Morgan's having a great sophomore year, and Peanut and Ari were good for us last year, and like you said, Kelvin had a great game the other day. It's just we're trying to figure out a rotation, and it's kind of when guys get opportunities, sometimes they step up and they seize the moment.
You talked about depth, and right now you have 7 players who've played over 100 minutes for you during the course of the season. Ari Jackson's played over 200 minutes, and then you have Davis Walker, who's approaching 100 minutes. So your depth is there right now. How key is analytics for you? Because as we progress into the years, it seems like how you figure out what maybe your starting lineup may be depends on how well a player plays the day before, the week before, whatever. But how important are analytics becoming for you as a coach?
Well, another guy that you didn't mention, Ben Palacios, has played 59 minutes, but he's only played in 4 of our 7 games because he's been dealing with injury that he could be back any day from. But he's another guy. If he had played in all 7 games, he'd be over 100 minutes too. So there's another guy to throw in the mix. But analytics wise, I think that as a staff, and we view the numbers part of the game differently than I would say ESPN and our basketball culture in general. We're really big on the plus minus, and the plus minus, the way that we do it is, while you're in the game, does our team increase its lead or do we give it away? And so when Jayden Smith the other day, for example, he played 16 minutes or 17 minutes, and during his 16 or 17 minutes, we won those minutes by I think 16 points while he was in. And Donovan Parker, he might only had 4 points, but during his minutes, we won by 21. So when Donovan Parker was out of the game, we lost by, what would it be, 15. So when he was on the bench, we were losing by 15 points. And we value that a lot more because there's so much that goes into the game more than scoring points and making assists and grabbing rebounds. You might be a great rebound guy, but if you never box your man out and you give up more than you get, then you're actually a rebounding liability. But the stat sheet shows you as being a good rebounder. You might be a great scorer, but if you turn the ball over a lot and you shoot it all the time and your shooting field goal percentage is bad, then you might not really be that good offensively. And so we look at field goal percentage, we look at 3-point percentage. We look at a lot of those things, and the plus minus is a huge thing for us. And the assist to turnover ratio, how many times are you making somebody else better, and how many times are you giving the ball to the other team? That's really important. We want to play guys that don't give the ball to the other team, and guys that pass the ball and make each other better. So those are a lot of things that we look at that I would say, our basketball culture doesn't value quite as much in general on a national level. But, those are things that we look at.
Moving forward, you faced McHenry tonight and first-year head coach George Suggs, a very young team over at McHenry. What are you expecting tonight from them?
Well, they finished 5th in the league last year, and they lost 1 starter and 2 of their top 8 guys, maybe. And then one of those guys is injured, but they started out 4-0 this year. They've played a tough schedule. 3 of those games were against good Division II teams, and they beat them all. And they have a lot of size. They play multiple guys that are between 6'5" and 6'9", and they have a lot of skill in shooting. And they're just solid defensively. They don't make very many mistakes. So it's going to be a game where we're going to have to execute. We're going to have to pass the ball really well because they're going to help. So you got to make the next pass and the next pass and hit the first open man. So that's going to be important. And defensively, we're going to have to be really solid. They got a lot of guys that can shoot the ball. They got good size anywhere. They can post up, 4 or 5 guys that are on the floor at a time can all post up and they can all shoot. And they just present a lot of difficult problems for us. And they're a heavy motion team, and sometimes those guys are hard to guard for 40 minutes. They get you tired, and you fall asleep for 1 second, and they got a guy shooting a layup at the rim or a wide open 3. So this can be a good test tonight to see where we're at.
Then this weekend, you get a quick turnaround and you go to Truman State on Saturday, a team that's been a top of the conference over the last couple of years. What do you expect out of them on Saturday?
Well, honestly, I haven't. Our coaches split up the scouts, and I usually just look at the game that's in front of us because it's never been good luck for me to look past any of our opponents. But I know them from the past. They got the same team they virtually had the last 2 years, minus a couple players, one of them being in the NBA now. But they're kind of like McKendree in that they're really sound. They're really skilled all over the place. They play extremely hard. They have good size too. They just, if you make any kind of mental error, they make you pay for it. And then they're really hard to score on because they're so sound and they're big and they play so hard. So it's going to be another really good test that we're not really even thinking about right now because we got our hands full with McKendree, but we're going to have to turn our attention to it whenever that buzzer sounds tonight in a hurry because we're going to have our hands full. And Coach Gauntz does half of our scouts and he's already working on them, so he'll have us prepared mentally for that quick turnaround.
How are things been for you this year compared to last year, where we were in a pandemic? We had no idea what was going to go on with the season. We start in December, COVID protocols in place, versus this year where things have seemed to open up. You have fans back in the building again. And how much has that been? How does that feel for you, especially as a second year coach, finally coaching in front of the Maryville fans, and then as well as people being in the building to actually rally around the team?
Yeah, it's been great. There's just been a lot of moments where you remember why you love to coach, and be around the game and be around the guys. And you get a good win last year and you walk out, there's a couple people cleaning up that pat you on the back, but this year you got parents and family members and friends and fans, and it's a good vibe. It's a good feeling. And this year from a coaching standpoint, we had I think last year we got 10 full practices in before our first game. We had 10 full practices in 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. I mean, they weren't full practices, but we were going 1 hour for 3 or 4 days a week. So by the time we started last year, this year we have more practices in before we even started last year. So it was a mess in so many different ways. And I don't think that you can, it's hard to quantify how much time you spent thinking about COVID protocols and how are we going to sit on the bench and what's the disinfectant time and the testing that we went through. There was a lot of things last year that took away from coaching basketball, on top of literally not having the same amount of time on the floor. And with being a first year coach, there was a lot to try to get in system wise that we just didn't have time for. And then when you did have time, your mind was consumed with 6 feet apart and wearing a mask and all that kind of stuff. And it was a lot to manage. But the good thing for us last year is, and I always looked at it this way, was everybody was kind of a first year head coach last year. And I thought it kind of gave me a little bit of an advantage in that everybody was dealing with the newness of COVID. And it wasn't something that was just unique to our program. So it kind of put us on an even playing field that way. It was just hard because we had limited bodies with guys opting out, and then we just did not have the time on the floor to work on stuff. So you had to do things through Zoom and everything. And I think there's some stuff you can do through Zoom, but it's just not the same as playing the game.
Coach, I appreciate a few minutes of your time, especially on a game day. Look forward to seeing you tonight against McHenry, and of course, best of luck on Saturday against Truman State.
All right. I appreciate it a lot, John. Thank you. We'll see you soon.